snow. So I'm glad to be here and not in that. What we do back home in that weather in Wisconsin is we boil a pot of water and we go outside and we throw it in the air and it turns to snow before it hits the ground. That's how we get through winter in the upper Midwest. So glad to be here. Beautiful day, blue skies. The Lord is with us, and I'm glad to be with all of you as well. I want to thank you for being here. Because I know that you're all busy people, right? None of us is here because we had too much time on our hands and we didn't know what we could do with the day. You're here because you're responding to our Lord's call to stand up and to serve and protect the least of our brothers and sisters, the unborn children in danger of abortion and their mothers who are in danger of abortion. So I want to thank you. I want to start out too by telling you a little bit about why I'm here today. And in a sense, I suppose it's obvious. I'm here because just like you, I'm pro-life. I've always been pro-life. There's not a point in my life where I've ever been anything other than pro-life. But for most of my life, I never did anything about it. And I don't know if that's because I was lazy. Maybe it's because I didn't know what to do to make a difference. But for one reason or another, I never acted on that conviction that every unborn baby, every mother, every human life is precious and sacred and needs to be actively defended. Instead, I was a guy on Sunday who'd spend 1 hour with the Lord and 10 hours on the couch watching football. That began to change one day. My wife and I were newlyweds and we lived in Chicago, Illinois. And as I arrived at work one morning, I walked through the doors of my office and I got a text message from my wife, Laura, which should have been my first sign that something was amiss. She never sends text messages. And she was texting me to let me know that one of her friends had reached out to her that morning and shared that she was pregnant. But don't worry about it, this friend said. She was going to take care of it. She was going to get an abortion. To make matters worse, all of the other friends in this group of friends said, you know what, that's the right decision. You've got to look out for yourself. You've got to look out for your future. Don't let anybody try to tell you this is some kind of a moral matter. Now, my wife at the time was not actually pro-life herself. At the time, she would have considered herself to be pro-choice. She wasn't radically or militantly pro-abortion by any means, but I think she'd just simply never come face-to-face with the tragic reality of the abortion crisis. But here in her coworker, Jessica, she found herself face-to-face with the reality of the abortion crisis, and she had an instant conversion. I'm so proud of the way my wife responded that day, because Laura went from waking up that morning considering herself pro-choice to just hours later offering Jessica whatever love and help and support and encouragement that Jessica might need to get through this pregnancy by choosing life. Laura offered to let Jessica move in with us and live with us rent-free to escape the pressure she was getting from her ex-boyfriend, the father of the child, who wanted her to have an abortion. Laura offered financial support. Laura offered, even as Laura was 8 months pregnant with our first son, she offered to adopt Jessica's baby and to raise that child as our own if that's what it would take to give her the courage that she needed to choose life. And that love, that help, that support, and that encouragement, it made a difference. And we know that it does because we hear that of people who have of women who have had abortions, as many as 80% of them say if one person, just one person, had reached out a helping hand and encouraged them to choose life, that they would have done so. And that's why this important. That's why the sign right here is so important. We care, we can help. So many women are looking for that sign. And you know about many babies who have been saved out on the sidewalks, but you never know the car that drives down this street slowly and it's occupied by a woman who is coming here for an abortion until she saw that sign, or you, or your smile, or the sign that you're holding, your love, and she chose life. Upwards of 80% of them say that they would have done so if someone had reached out to them. So for Jessica, my wife Laura was that one person. And Jessica went from looking up the names of abortion providers in downtown Chicago to looking up the names of babies. She decided she would keep her baby, she would parent her baby, and she would name her baby Michaela. And Laura and I, we were so delighted by this life saved. We were so thrilled that we had the opportunity to play some small role in this happy ending of the story. And above all, we were thrilled for Jessica and for her baby and for this new mother-child relationship that at last was beginning to take root and to blossom. And so we scheduled to have dinner with Jessica one Friday evening in downtown Chicago. And we got to the restaurant and Jessica wasn't there. Her phone was turned off. She didn't return our calls. We thought, you know what? She's pregnant. Maybe she's not feeling well, or maybe we got our wires crossed on the time or the date, but we'll figure it out soon enough. And we did. 2 days later, it was Sunday morning. We got up, we went to church, we came home, we had lunch. We were just starting to clear the table and wash the dishes. And that's when Laura's phone rang. She answered it. It was Angela. I'm sorry, Jessica. I got another name in my head for some reason. It was Jessica. Jessica was sobbing because it turns out that while we were waiting for Jessica at the restaurant that Friday evening, she was having her abortion. She had been able to withstand the pressure that she had gotten from her friends, from her boyfriend, even from her own parents. But when she got that same pressure from her doctors, that's what broke her. She gave in, she had the abortion, and now here she was on the phone, heartbroken, devastated, never to be the same. In my own way, I was heartbroken and devastated, and in my own way, I would never be the same, because that's that moment where I recognized it wasn't enough for me to just be pro-life. I had to do something about it. I promised myself right then and there that from that moment on, whatever I could do to prevent even one more life from being lost, even one more heart from being broken by abortion, that I would do it. And so that in a nutshell, my friends, is why I'm here today. But I think in a very real way, that's why we're all here today, to prevent even one more life from being lost, even one more heart like Jessica's from being broken by the violence of abortion. About 6 months after Jessica had her abortion, the first ever nationally coordinated 40 Days for Life campaign was getting set to kick off in 89 cities in 33 states across our country. And in one of those cities, Aurora, Illinois, the town outside of Chicago where I was then living, Planned Parenthood was putting the finishing touches on one of the first of its abortion mega centers. These abortion facilities designed to take the lives of unborn children in greater numbers and with greater efficiency than anything the Western world has ever seen before. I couldn't get involved in that first 40 Days for Life campaign. I had a newborn and I was getting set to move my family up to Madison, Wisconsin, where we now live. But I watched, and from a distance I saw how through this campaign, hundreds of pro-lifers took to the streets in peaceful prayer. How a pro-life community that in many regards had been asleep at the wheel was suddenly awakened, and how those prayers even managed to delay the opening of that abortion facility for some time. And so when I completed my move, I got involved in the next year's 40 Days for Life campaign. And I'll be honest with you, I don't know if is this anybody's first 40 Days for Life campaign, or have you all been here before? Awesome. Thank you for coming out for the very first time. I appreciate it so much. And I know Margarita does too, and I know those who don't have a voice, perhaps even inside that building right now or in the days to come, appreciate it too. But on my first day, I don't know if I quite recognized what I had gotten myself into. But if I didn't know on day one, I found out on day two. Because on day two, my wife was out praying in front of Planned Parenthood when she was approached by a young man named Ed. And I still can't even begin to fathom or imagine the degree of heartache and sorrow and pain that it must have taken for Ed to approach my wife. But he came up to my wife, a complete stranger, and explained to her how recently he had gotten his girlfriend pregnant. He wanted the baby. She wanted an abortion. They argued about it. She broke up with him. She stole his credit card. She used it to pay for her abortion and then to pour salt on the open wound in the wake of their broken relationship. She mailed him the sonogram image of his aborted child. It's the very worst our world has to offer, and it broke our hearts. It brought us once again back face to face with the tragic reality of the abortion crisis, but it also lit a fire under me. And at the end of those 40 days, our local leader, a woman named Amy, the Margarita of Madison, Wisconsin, Amy came up to us and she said, you know, she was going to be getting married after the 40 days ended, and she and her new husband would be relocating to a new community. She needed somebody to step up and lead 40 Days for Life. Would we be the ones to do it? And I said, yes, absolutely. It was a no-brainer. And I remember telling my wife how excited I was to lead a 40 Days for Life campaign, how honored and yet humbled I was that we could serve in that capacity. But at the same time, I said, 40 Days for Life is hard. 40 Days for Life is challenging. As you know, it's difficult to be out here day after day and watch women drive into that parking lot and walk into that building pregnant and walk out of that building hours later wounded, physically, spiritually, emotionally, and mentally. It's difficult to put in the administrative legwork like Margarita does to recruit enough volunteers to come out here to pray all day, every day for 40 straight days. So I told my wife, I'm glad we can do this, but I'm really glad that we've got a break and we don't have to lead this 40 days until next year. Whenever I share that, I can't help but to think of the old Yiddish proverb that suggests if you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. Because here I was laying out my plan for a nice long break. I had no idea what was coming next. The Lord certainly did, so he must have been laughing. But what happened next is this. The following month, I got a phone call from an attorney named Matt Bowman. I had no idea who this guy was, but he introduced himself as a pro-life, pro-family attorney representing a Christian organization, a legal organization called the Alliance Defending Freedom. He shared the names of some mutual friends in the pro-life movement to establish his credibility, and then he dropped a bombshell on me. He told me that the University of Wisconsin, where I went to school, where my wife went to school, where we met and fell in love, we loved the University of Wisconsin, but he told me that my alma mater was in the late stages of secretly preparing to open up a late-term abortion facility right on the heart of our college campus. We're talking about abortions that are so gruesome and so brutal that they're not even legal in most of secular Europe. In fact, the United States is one of only a few countries on the entire planet that allows these late-term abortions. Countries like the People's Republic of China and North Korea. My friends, when we as a people find ourselves on a human rights list next to China and North Korea, it is a sure sign that something has gone dramatically wrong. Matt told me that the university was deliberately keeping this late-term abortion plan secret to prevent any sort of a public outcry or backlash, but he told me he was going to end the secrecy. Within a week, his organization was going to issue a major announcement exposing and blowing the lid off of this plan, and he asked me if, for my part, as the new 40 Days for Life leader in Madison, would I rally our pro-life community for a prayerful demonstration in front of the building where these abortions were due to take place, maybe within a day or two of him issuing that announcement. And I said, yeah, but I had no idea what I was doing. I mean, how do you rally the pro-life community on just 48 hours notice? A work day, a school day, a location with next to no parking. And oh, by the way, the second week of January in the state of Wisconsin. And when the wind chill that day dropped far below zero, I began to wonder if we were going to have anybody out on the sidewalk. But our Lord is faithful and he's powerful, because we had hundreds of people all up and down the street, both sides of the street, singing, praying, praising God, witnessing to the dignity of each and every human life. Media came out in full force, television, radio, newspapers, and that event that was scheduled to last just 1 hour was still going strong more than 2 hours later. I was so thrilled, and I couldn't wait to get home and call my loved ones from out of town and share with them just what a mighty work the Lord had done in Madison, Wisconsin that morning. And I was thrilled again when we sat down and saw that our humble little rally that I didn't think anybody was coming to was a lead headline story on the evening television news broadcasts. But as that day wound down, as the credits rolled on those broadcasts, I began to grow a little bit more reflective, contemplative, haunted. I was haunted. That might be the best word for it. I was haunted in particular by the memory of one of the faces I had met out on the sidewalk that morning. It was a young girl. She was probably about 6 years old, and she greeted me with the biggest, most beautiful smile that I have ever seen to this day. And you might be asking, Steve, why in the world were you haunted by the memory of a beautiful little girl's smiling face? And the answer to that question is because even in spite of how bundled up she was for the sub-zero temperatures, I quickly recognized that my young friend had Down syndrome. And some of you know where I'm going with this, that here in the Western world, upwards of 90% of children diagnosed in the womb with Down syndrome lose their lives to abortion. My young friend had made it, but I couldn't help but to stop and think that for every beautiful smiling face like hers, there are nine more who should be with us but are not. And once again, for a third time, you might say, I found myself face to face with the tragic reality of the abortion crisis. But it was a good thing, because it was a reminder to me that we couldn't just celebrate that we had been on TV and had an exciting day. We had to get back to work. And the very next day, we started planning a rally and a march through downtown Madison. We brought out Sean Carney, the co-founder of 40 Days for Life, now my boss. Sean brought his friend, Dr. Haywood Robinson, a former abortion provider with a beautiful conversion testimony, and we saw thousands of people converge upon Madison, Wisconsin for the largest pro-life event our state had seen in more than a quarter century. Now, days later, we thought we had a lot of momentum. And days later, when the University of Wisconsin Board of Directors, or Authority Board, whatever they call it, gathered to vote, we thought maybe through all of the witness on the street and the prayer vigils and the emails and the media and the publicity and tens of thousands of petitions delivered, we thought maybe they were going to vote to scrap this plan. And instead they voted 11-3 to proceed with this gruesome late-term abortion plan. And I went home that night feeling sorry for myself, filled with self-pity. I got a call from an old military chaplain, pro-life guy who had been pro-life since long before I was even born, and he said, Steve, how'd it go tonight? And I whined about how we lost. And I'll never forget the old man's response. He said, Steve, of course you lost. You haven't been at this pro-life work very long, have you? This is when we begin to fight. And so we did. We continued to manage a presence out on the sidewalk day after day, week after week. Nearly every day of every week, we would have somebody out there for some period of time. And the Lord is faithful in responding to those prayers. You know, it's exciting when we can go to Washington, D.C. and march with hundreds of thousands of people, or state-level events where we've got hundreds or thousands of people. Those are great days, and they're powerful. And some days, in fact, we would be out on the sidewalk with 100 or 200 people, but most of the time we'd have 1 or 2 people. I think that's important, because as important as it is for us to get together, and we've got joyful fellowship today, I think these days and these moments inspire us to keep on going when it's not fun, because that's when I think the Lord does some of his greatest work. And he answered our prayers for sure, because that abortion center that was scheduled to open that winter was delayed until spring. Spring became summer. Summer became fall. Fall became December again. Suddenly we had gone an entire year. Not a single abortion had been performed. As many as 125 of these gruesome late-term abortions had been prevented. But at the same time, I could see trouble on the horizon. I knew what the university was up to. They were trying to wait us out. How much longer could I rally the pro-life community to pray in front of an abortion center that wasn't even doing abortions? But yet if we packed up and went home, that would give the university exactly what it wanted. And under the cover of our absence, they'd be able to swoop in and begin doing these late-term abortions. I had no idea how to break the stalemate. Every idea or strategy I could think of just wasn't enough. And my wife then said, Steve, I've got an idea. She said, I think we need to do an extra 40 Days for Life campaign. I told my wife I thought she was crazy. In Madison, we've done, at that point at least, we had only done the fall campaign each year. We go 24 hours. By the grace of God, we've now got 13 vigils in a row where we've never missed an hour of prayer, 24-hour coverage, all fall campaign. We wear our people out. We run them into the ground. They lay it all out on the line. Plus, on top of this, we've been fighting the university for a year and a half. I know we call this a spring campaign because it was founded in Texas, but those of us from the upper Midwest know better that it's a winter campaign. There's still next to no parking. I just told my wife, look, I appreciate the idea, but we'll never get the volunteers out to pray that we need to come out and pray. So what's plan B? I'll never forget my wife's response. She said, you know what, Steve, you might be right. We might not get the volunteers that we need to come out and pray all day, every day for 40 days. But if the Lord wants this thing to happen, he's going to send us the people to make it happen. Kind of like you didn't get your 100 families, you didn't get your 50, you didn't get your 10, you started with 3. She said, let's start with what we have and we'll see what the Lord does with that. What transformation he brings with that. He's the Lord of loaves and fishes. Where is your faith? And besides, she added, I don't think the university can withstand 40 straight days of us in front of their building all day, every day. Well, how could I argue with that? I couldn't. Of course, we did the 40 Days for Life vigil. My wife taught me a thing or two about trusting in the Lord, because not only did we fill every hour of our vigil schedule that spring more easily than we ever had before, but within a month of day 40, the university dropped its plans to perform late-term abortions on our college campus. The Lord has done great things for us, and holy is his name. And I think if that were the only fruit of this entire year-and-a-half-long saga, that would be a mighty and powerful act of God in and of itself, but he had more in store for us. With God, the best is always yet to come. We saw our state enact a ban on the university ever revisiting such a scheme. We saw the architect of this abortion plan, the abortionist herself, get frustrated, pack her bags, and move to Boston, leaving Planned Parenthood short an abortion provider. We saw the number of late-term abortions in our state drop like a rock. The following year, the number of total abortions in our state dropped like a rock and dropped and dropped and dropped. We recognized we had real momentum on our hands. We couldn't afford to go back to the way things used to be. And so we launched what we called the 365 initiative, where now for more than a decade, actually, every single day Planned Parenthood was open for business. We've had people out in front of it praying, sidewalk counseling, witnessing to life. Some of our volunteers took that momentum in a different direction. They saw the building across the street from the abortion center up for sale, and they bought it and they turned it into a women's care center designed to provide women in crisis with real options, real health care, real choice. That women's care center, combined with our year-round presence, we are seeing lives saved all the time. And all things considered, we have seen Madison, Wisconsin, one of the most abortion-friendly communities in the United States of America, become nothing less than a pro-life powerhouse. And so I share that what the Lord has done where I live. But now on this day, day 1 of the 40 days, we look forward to seeing what the Lord is going to do here in Atlanta, Georgia. And it's going to be marvelous things. We are joining together right now with 567 cities worldwide, different countries, different cultures, different languages, but one shared language of prayer to our one Father above in heaven. And I love that, because we've got campaigns right now all throughout Latin America. Now, I think close to 200 in Latin America. We've got campaigns in Australia, Eastern Europe, Western Europe, nearly every, actually now I think every city in the country of Croatia has a 40 Days for Life vigil. It's not a big country, but that's a lot of vigils. We've got them in India, we got 40 Days for Life campaign in Guam. We've got 40 days. I don't even know where. I don't think I could find Guam on a map, actually. I know it's technically part of the U.S., so I don't even know where it is, but I'm glad they come together to pray with us. All around this world, people uniting to pray the same prayers in their own language, and I think there's power to that. It means when you're out here and we don't have 25 or however many people we have out here today, it's just you and a friend, and you're tempted to feel alone, know that somewhere in any part of the planet there is somebody praying these prayers with you. But I think more importantly than where 40 Days for Life is gone is what the Lord is doing through it. We now know of 18,016 babies saved from abortion through your prayerful witness, many of them right here in Georgia. I want to really commend all of you because every 40 Days for Life leader and volunteer around the world, they're willing to help these women, not just through their pregnancy, but beyond. And I was sitting down with Kipper Tab at Perimeter Church yesterday. I know he was out here praying this morning, and I told him, you know, from my vantage point, I'm blessed to work with all these campaigns all around the world, and one of the joys is I get to see just sort of what are the things that are superlative? What are the locations that have greater opportunities, that are more successful at this or more successful at that? And I would say that Margarita and all of you, there's nobody in the world, no 40 Days for Life location in the world, of all those hundreds of locations, that do a better job of maintaining the relationship with the moms who choose life, you know, through that first year, through that second year, years and years. I mean, think about how old some of these children are. They're now going to school. We talk about saving a baby, but when we save a baby, you here and your work are living proof that it's not just saving a baby, it's saving a toddler, it's saving a child, it's saving a teenager, it's saving a young adult, it's saving someone who may get married and have children of his or her own one day, ensuring that the impact of your generosity with your time out here extends generations into the future. I mentioned that number, 18,000. I think the number is much higher. Abby Johnson, who you've probably all heard of, the longtime abortion worker, Planned Parenthood Employee of the Year, and subject of the great movie Unplanned. She says that when there's somebody out praying in front of an abortion center, the no-show rate for those abortion appointments can go up to as high as 75%. We don't need 1 million people. I know a lot of times in this pro-life world, we're like, we need masses of people. But the Lord and the crux of the pro-life message, I think, to us is every individual is important and created in the image and likeness of God. We don't need the masses. Sometimes we just need 1 or 2 people out here, 2 for safety, but 2 people out here to empower a woman in that less desperate moment. Can be in any hour that you come out here when you think you're too busy, you got the laundry to do, you got to rake the leaves, whatever you got to do. When you make that sacrifice of every 4 children scheduled to lose their lives in that building, 3 of them may live to see another day. We also know now of 211 abortion workers who've experienced conversion and left their jobs and begun to walk with Christ through prayers of people like you. I think that's the most powerful number of them all. Because look at our world today. None of you will be surprised when I say there is great division and polarization in our world today. Everywhere we look, political division, social division, racial division, economic division, everywhere we look, people are at each other's throats. And here we see women and men who don't just support abortion on that intellectual level or that ideological level. They earn their entire livelihoods off of it. And when they become pro-life and leave their jobs, it goes to show there is nobody beyond the reach of God's grace.
Amen.
I don't know if any of you get our 40 Days for Life emails. If you don't, you can sign up for them at 40daysforlife.com. Just enter in your email address and start getting those email addresses. And today, just this morning, right before we arrived here, we announced the 108th and 109th abortion facilities to close their doors and go out of business once and for all following a 40 Days for Life campaign. Thanks be to God. I'm excited about them, too, because these aren't in, these aren't in, I said last night, I say it again, I found out it's true since I arrived to town yesterday. All good things come from God, yes, but all good people come from Georgia. And these abortion facilities, they didn't close in Georgia or in Utah or in Indiana. They closed their doors in Chicago, Illinois, very pro-abortion city. They actually advertise abortion on billboards there. I've never seen anything like that. And London, England, the busiest late-term abortion facility and the second busiest abortion facility in all of the UK, out of business. And I can't wait for that great day when I get the call from Margarita sharing with me that this facility is added to the list of those that will not take another human life because of your prayers. So as I wrap up here, I want to encourage each of you to do 2 things before the end of the day. Very important. 2 things that I think can transform this community. The first thing is this. I want to ask each of you to consider over these 40 days, how many hours can you come out here and stand on this patch of grass or wherever it is that you're allowed to stand and pray? When you've got that number in your head, I want to encourage you to cross it out. And take 1 or 2 steps beyond it. Stretch yourself. I think when we give 99% of what we have to give, I think the Lord works with that and he honors it. I think when we give 100% and we lay it all out on the line, that's when the Lord moves mountains to answer our prayers. Not because we can earn or merit God's graces and mercies, not by any stretch of the imagination, but we do know this, that we serve a God who refuses to be outdone in generosity. So I want to encourage you to be out here as often as you can. I think the Lord is going to move mountains as a result. Second thing I want to ask you to do is, I've never met a 40 Days for Life leader who said, you know what, Steve, we have all the volunteers we need to end abortion in this community. We always need more folks to come out and pray. The more the body of Christ unites, the better. And the number one reason why someone who's pro-life has not joined us out on this sidewalk is because that person was never invited. You know, we've got a very technological, technocratic society right now, and we think we can do everything through apps or through social media or, you know, big top-down strategy. But, you know, our Lord Jesus Christ, he changed the world by saying to people one at a time, come follow me. If it worked for him, I think the same approach works for all of us too. The power of a personal phone call or sitting down to coffee, it means so much more in these days than it did in the days before computers and smartphones. So I want to challenge you before the end of the day. I want to ask you to make a list of everybody who you know who's pro-life, your friends, your family members, your coworkers, your neighbors, the people you go to school with, the people you go to church with, everybody that you know who's pro-life, put them on a list. And then over the next week or so, invite them to join you out here. It's never harder than that first time, and it's never scarier than if you go without a friend. So be that friend to go with somebody, because so rarely do we encounter someone who says, yeah, I went out to 40 Days for Life and it wasn't for me, I'm not coming back. No, usually even the most reluctant and frightened person comes out here and is surprised to find out that this is peaceful. It's not confrontational. It's not scary. It's just like praying, except for it's in front of an abortion center. And many times those people find themselves called out again and again and again. And if everybody here right now invited 10 of their friends to join them at the abortion center, would all 10 say yes? No, probably not. I'll be honest about that. But would 1 or 2 of them say yes? I do think so. I do think so. And that would mean 25 or 50 new people who have never prayed on the street before coming out here to pray. People with different gifts, different charisms, different relationships with the Lord. You never know how the Lord is going to use these people out on the sidewalk. So I want to encourage you to do those 2 things. One last little plug. I just published a book called This Is When We Begin to Fight. It's kind of the story, more in-depth version of the story I told you about our battle with the University of Wisconsin, as well as some other topics. But I've got that for $10. I'd love to send you home with a copy. And plus, then I don't have to figure out how to get the books back on the plane when I head back tomorrow. But $10, if you'd like a copy, I'm happy to sign it. But the most important 2 things are come out and bring your friends. So fight the good fight, finish the race, keep the faith, and continue to bring the light of Christ to this place of darkness, which so desperately needs it, and to those in your community who so desperately need it. Because we know John's Gospel, chapter 1, verse 5, the light shines in the darkness, and the darkness has not overcome it. God bless you.
Thank you so much, Steve. You guys feeling inspired yet? Instead of, are we having fun yet? Or are we inspired yet? I know I am. Just piggybacking on what Steve said, one time we were out here praying and a grandmother pulled up right over there and she asked us all to come over, that she had someone she wanted us to meet. And it was a little baby. And she said, this is my grandchild. I can't get through this without crying. But she said that she had been driving by one day and was in her mind planning to make an appointment here for her daughter, who she was pressuring to abort her baby. And she saw a couple people out here praying and our sign, and she was convicted by the Holy Spirit not to keep pressuring her daughter. And she went home and she told her daughter, from now on, I'm going to support you. And so she wanted us to come and meet that little baby. So we didn't know it that day. We didn't know. So like he said, just 1 or 2 people out here praying, and it is good to have a sign, and I do have signs over there and all kinds of materials. They're all free except for his book, Help Yourself. So now let's go into, I'm going to skip one song. Let's do, I think it's number 6.